Welcome back, everybody, to the JSS Podcast. I am your host, Byron Enriquez, the casual executive, your local finance bro. And today's episode kind of wanted to talk about some stuff that's important. One of the things that us here at JSS in this first quarter of the year, we've been really digging deep and doing some organization and doing some things that we feel are going to help us grow and expand and kind of take us into the future where we see our company. And it really got me thinking, because one of the things that we've been working on a lot is our brand. And I think branding is tough for a lot of people to get a hold of, or mentally, right, in your head, get a hold of, grasp, what a brand is or what your brand is. And we all know the big brands, right? We've all heard the big, we know the logos and we know the catchphrases and that thing. But I think it's important for us small business owners to kind of approach things the same way. A brand is not just your logo, it's not your colors, it's not your website, but I'm talking about what your true kind of brand is. One of the things that we like to focus on is our reputation. Our brand is our reputation. Our brand is our positioning. Our brand is what people think of you and your organization just by hearing your name, or just by hearing a small thing about you. Your brand is what's going to open doors. Brand is what's going to start a conversation before you've even started. A brand is what people think of you before you've said a word, right? And I think that's very important. That's one of the things that we've been, again, really, really focused on here in this first quarter with JSS, and really kind of breaking down who we are as an organization. One of the things that I share and I talk about is that at JSS, we're different verticals. We have JSS Financial, which is our private lending arm. We have JSS Capital, which is our investment operations, where people can invest with us into our debt. One of the things we don't talk about very much because it's more of a localized thing, but we also have JSS Real Estate. JSS Real Estate is a full-service real estate brokerage. We focus on helping investors, dispose of assets or find investment opportunities. And one of the things that it's always been important for me in the vision and creating the vision and direction for the company is that we can have three separate verticals, but that they all coincide and they all mesh and they all work together for a greater purpose. And that's the big focus that we've been working on. We've done some revamping of our websites, logos, marketing pieces, all to communicate our brand, just to communicate who we are, so that just by you seeing JSS, right, we're the one-stop shop. We can give you full service. We can we drive deal flow through our financial, through our mortgage and real estate operations, but we also have investment operations where we can deploy capital, we can securitize it, we can go to secondary markets and sell our paper. So it's all inclusive, in who we are. And it just got me, again, like I said, it got me thinking, really, how do we build that, right? As a small business, it's so much more than just marketing, right? It's so much more than just marketing pieces. When somebody hears your name, your company name, instantly people should know who you are, what you do, and why they should trust you over everybody else, right? And that's a question that I think I ask a lot, and as I teach sales and as I talk to business owners, it's why should somebody do business with you, right? And to be honest, most people can't answer that question, and my response to that is, if you cannot articulate why someone should do business with you, how do you expect somebody coming from the outside looking in to be able to want to do business with you? Most salespeople don't know what makes them special.
Yeah.
Right? But if you don't know what makes you special, why would somebody want to work with you?
Yeah.
If you can't figure it out.
Right. Yeah, well, it's always a great answer. I think everybody has a different and unique talent that they can bring to the table. You heard Frank at Coffee Collab mention answer your phone.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the one thing that most people don't do is they don't answer their phone.
That's true.
They don't treat this like a full-time job, So me and my partner Prima, so he and I got into our background's car business,
Okay.
so we move fast.
Yeah.
We answer our phones, which seems silly enough.
It's the basics.
Yeah, so many of those basics I think just get overlooked. And during COVID, he and I did really well, and while everybody else kind of didn't. And it was surprising to me the amount of agents, seasoned agents, that just wouldn't answer their phones, and they were working, and just how lackadaisy I felt like they were. And I hate to say it that way; it sounds bad.
But it's true.
That
Yeah.
that was the issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So back to I don't know that I'm necessarily special. I think I would say work ethics is probably the biggest difference between me and everybody else.
Yeah.
Any top agent, it's gonna. I think, in my personal opinion, boils down to work ethics.
Yeah.
They come to work, and we see a lot of agents that do this part time, and for whatever reason, economic circumstance, they enjoy doing it. I don't think that they're not doing it full time for a reason, right?
Yeah. No, but like actually, was telling him as we were driving out here, I was like, one of the things that I know that like I've paid attention to you stood out, right? In the coffee and collab stuff,
Yeah.
You always look sharp. Always, it's you. The way you carry yourself is, you are your brand.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And I think
100%.
those are the small little things, like you said, come from the car business, coming from any kind of sales. It's you.
Yeah.
Right. People want to work with you because they like you and they want to be your friend. And then obviously you know what you're doing, right? That's a given.
That's a given. Well,
a given.
that's you would think it was, but you would think that was a given, and that's where I think that's actually the biggest thing that makes us, I would say, us different. We're any top agent anywhere. It doesn't matter the brand, doesn't matter who they're working for, Cola, Banker, Real, doesn't matter. A top agent, that people want to work with me, and it's for that exact reason, right? And so I didn't mean to interrupt you, but but I agree with that statement. So yeah, people like me, and this is a relationship business, and it's definitely a contact sport. So if as long as you're staying in front of people, I think those opportunities are great.
Yeah.
You know,
Right? If your brand is unclear, the market gets confused. If you don't know who you are, it's going to slow you down. If people can't trust that you know what you're talking about, then why would they want to work with you? Deals slow down, your referrals slow down, growth slows down because you don't have a cohesive message of who you are and what image you're projecting. Right? What's your reputation? And I'm not talking reputation online, meaning just your Yelp reviews or this or that, and those are great. I think those are great avenues for people the consumers to go out there and and say that. But our reputation goes so much deeper than that. That with from vendors, from coworkers, your superiors, people that you do business with. In the real estate community, other realtors that you interact with transactions, escrow officers, title companies, insurance agents. What reputation do they have? One of the things that we were talking about in our latest marketing group or networking group, sorry, was something super basic about answering your phone. And that's one of the things that have always made my thing, was always the fact that I always answer the phone. And that's always been my calling card for 20 plus years now, is you always answer your phone. Right. And that makes a difference between the guys that are available and not. Right. So it's the small little things that will make a difference. Right. And that's your reputation. And that builds on that. Again, here at JSS, we're really hyper focused on that right now, and we're designing our brand and creating our brand where we have a global vision. JSS is bigger than just one vertical, right? It's bigger than just a mortgage company or a real estate company or an investment company. We're all three, but separate at the same time, right? Each division has a role. And it has an independence, and it can grow independently and can flourish, but they all feed off of each other and kind of support each other's growth, right? And I think that's important as you build your own brand. What do you do? What sets you apart, right? Is it I ask again. I've taught sales for many years, and I teach people. These are the same things you hear. I even wrote them down. Oh, well, we care more. We work harder than everybody else. We provide great service. We're honest. We have experience. And look, the truth is, everybody says that, right? That's the same thing that we've been taught to answer, you know, when somebody says that. But what really is your value proposition? What is really your identity? What is that very specific niche that you have that makes you different? Right? I'm a likable person. I'm the whatever it is. It's you have to have something that makes you unique. If not, you're white noise. You're just like everybody else. As a real estate agent, as a loan officer, as an insurance agent, as anything else, right? One of the things that I've always said about mortgage is we all sell the same product, right? There's very small differences in product type, and oh, there's this difference in pricing and in rates. But for the most part, we all sell the same product. So why would somebody want to do business with you as opposed to Joe over here or Bob or Mary, whoever it is, right? If we're all selling the same product, how do you compete? How do you differentiate yourself with somebody else? In the investment world, kind of the same thing. When you're making an offer, when you're looking to buy properties, what makes you different? When you're managing your portfolio of investment properties, what makes you different? When you're putting your properties out for rent, what makes you different? Right? All those little things are the what that's your brand, right? And that is what that reputation that you're building is what drives success and drives growth and drives expansion. It doesn't necessarily mean you want to expand to have 100 employees, 200, 300. Like that's not necessarily when I talk about growth and expansion, that's not what I mean. It can be a part of it, right? And it does play a big part. But how do you create a business, right? One of the things we talk about, week in and week out on our podcast is what's the difference between a hustler and somebody who's out there creating a transaction or creating a job to somebody who's building a business, that business professional, right? It's that brand, it's that reputation, it's having that identity of what sets you apart. Again, we talk about at JSS, right? And like, it's top of mind, so I keep bringing it up. We're finance driven, right? We have that mindset that we look at transactions financially. We have a real estate background where we're not only financing a project, but we know about the real estate. We know the market. We know what's happening with certain property types and asset classes, and we know what's happening. We're tuned in and plugged into the capital markets. We know what's happening in Wall Street. We know what types of loans are being purchased. We know the market for investors and the rate of return that they're looking to get in their money. Right? We know what we're competing with bond market and with stocks. It's a whole ecosystem that we're building where somebody comes to us, we can advise because we're plugged into all aspects of it, and all facets of it, and make it kind of independent. We're not your typical lender, we're not your typical broker, we're not your typical investment house, right? And I know it's sometimes, and I get passionate about that because this is the vision that I've had for many years and how we're growing into it. And we're not nowhere close to where I want to be and where I feel that we can be, right? But we're building something where JSS is a brand. JSS is bigger than just one small operation. We're more than a mortgage company. We're more than a real estate company. We're more than a debt fund. We're all three, but separate at the same time. Right? And I think that's something unique. That's what sets us apart. That's our value proposition. That we can, when we're giving you information about a certain specific product, whatever it is along our product line, and whatever vertical we're offering it. Um, we know how that business impacts other sides, and we know the outside pressures and everything that's going to affect that specific product, right? So that's how we advise people. You want to create a brand where people know, again, like I said, people know exactly who you are, people know how you operate, people know how you treat them. All those things make a big difference. In your brand strategy. Don't just build a random business, right? You want to build something that's aligned with your core, of who you are as an individual, what you care about, and what you're trying to achieve as your bigger purpose. And that's the thing. You have to support that larger vision, right? So it's important why a lot of these companies have a mission statement, have what they're trying to accomplish, because unless you know that specifically as an individual, as an investor, as a business owner, as a salesperson, as a loan officer, as a real estate agent, all of the above, unless you know what that core is for you, you're not going to be able to create your brand. Um, I know I get a lot of pushback. I have at times where people say, I'm just a loan officer. I'm just a cog in this bigger piece. I work for a bank. I work for a credit union. I work for a broker. I am a realtor. I work for a bigger real estate firm. I'm not the broker. I don't own this business. Well, my answer to always that is you are your business, right? If you're not if you're not in an organization where you're a W-2 employee and you're making a paycheck for clocking in and clocking out, then you are a business owner. And how you approach that will make the difference. How you approach that, uh, that mindset you have going into that is gonna be what sets you apart. If you know, again, what makes you different, what sets you apart, what reputation you want to give people, that as they talk to you or as they come across you, what do you want them to know about you? It's gonna make the difference, right? But it's important because that brand that you create is creating trust, right? One of the things that we have always focused on here at JSS is with our social media, and actually this podcast, is to create and to give credibility, so that when we have clients or we have potential investors or we have people who are just trying to get information, and they look us up and they Google and they go to the social media pages, um, they'll get a feel for who we are, right? Not everything, but they know me, the CEO, the owner. They know what I stand for. They know, they've heard my voice many times, right? So that's a big thing. They know the content that we put out. So before our meeting, before a phone call, before that first interaction that we have, they've already done some research. If I'm giving them, sending them our pitch deck, they've most likely already have heard some of our podcasts or heard some of our content or seen, uh, our reputation precedes us, right? They're already forming an opinion of who we are prior to having that first meeting, right? So you want a brand that opens a door for you. You want a brand that tells them who you are before you walk into the room. Do you want to tell them that, yes, you may be small, but you still value this. You still value your customer service. You still value, uh, that professionalism that you can give. One of the things that when we started JSS, I saw a big gap in this private money, hard money world, where it's, for lack of a better word, it was very slimy for a long time. In order to get uh, a private loan or a hard money loan, you were talking to some guy who you were afraid, or didn't really know who you were trusting to giving your information to. And our focus has always been to build an organization, on the mortgage side, where we're building. Uh, it's almost as if you're working with a big bank, right? I've always said that we have the websites, and we have the portals where you can upload your documents. We have, our servicing platform to make your payments, and make your payments online, credit cards, ACH payments, or you have, when you're paying for an appraisal, you log in and you can create. There's safety and there's protections around your information. All those things that you would expect with the Bank of America's, the Chase, the big organizations. Obviously, we're not that size, but we've always wanted to put out that as our reputation, that we're always somebody that can be trusted. We're always going to answer the phone. We have a physical presence. We have a presence online and social media where our reputation matters. So we're not going to just disappear. We're not going to, not provide the services that we're offering. Right. And I think that's always been something for us, a big focus for us. Right. We're very very consistent with that. We're very clear in our messaging. We're focused on what we're putting out there. And I think that's important for everybody listening, as a business owner, again, as a salesperson, it's what message are you projecting when somebody speaks to you or somebody sees your social media or somebody sees your website, what message are you projecting? Um, are they buying what you're selling? Or are they believing it? Or is it just some canned, templated answers that everybody else does, right? Oh, I'm good. I'm consistent. I answer my phone. I'm the guy that you can count on. And, we've all heard all of that stuff, right? But if it's not genuine and if it's not who you are, it's not going to make a difference, right? It's, you have to define that brand because if you do not define your brand, the market will, right? If you don't take charge and take a lead on who you want to be and how you want to be portrayed and how you want to be interpreted, then the market will, right? People will say who you are. Oh yeah, that's Bob. He doesn't answer the phone. Oh, that's Bob. He doesn't get his deals closed. Oh, that's Bob. He doesn't follow up. Oh, that's Bob, right? Because you're letting the market dictate what you are. Oh yeah, I don't know who he must not sell a lot of properties because I don't see anything on social media. Oh, he's always at the baseball game. Whatever whatever it is, if you're not controlling that brand, somebody else will. And somebody else, that perception or how they analyze that opinion of you is going to form. And once that opinion is formed, it is very hard to change, right? It's very hard, even if it's not factual, it is very hard to change somebody's perception of you. Um, right? It's having that consistency in your website and your documentation, your email, your business cards. One of the things that I always tell people is if you want a business and you want to be professional, spend a little money and get a professional domain. It's not, hey, Bob, Byron says at gmail.com. It's just take that extra step to add that professionalism. It gives people that confidence of who they're dealing with, that it's not just some random person on the other side, right? Because a lot of times, unfortunately, with business nowadays, a lot of business is done online, through social media, through email, through text message. There's not a lot of that face to face, eyeball to eyeball contact that we have with our clients. So we have to elevate our reputation and our brands so that you give them that confidence of who they're dealing with, right? And I think it's really really important in how you what you're presenting and what message you're putting out there. And if you control that, I think will make a big difference in your success, make a big difference in your growth and your expansion, and make a big difference of who does business with you, the quality of clients you're getting. Um, the trust, the amount of confidence when you ask somebody for a document and when you ask somebody to sign something, they're not going to question it because they believe you. You have that trust that you've earned through your reputation and your brand. They know that when they're dealing with JSS or they're dealing with Bob's real estate or whatever it is, they know that they can trust that they're dealing with a professional that has their best interest in mind and will execute to the best of their ability and their professionalism to get that desired outcome, right? Again, second part of that is do what you say, right? Don't just put out the reputation because that once you give somebody that opportunity and you fail, it's hard to get it back, right? So that's a whole different topic on execution. Right now, it's if people know what they're getting with you, right? They know that when you ask for something, there's a reason behind it. They won't hesitate. Hesitation will always kill a deal. Right? If they don't believe you, if they don't know that why they're being asked for this or what information is being asked, why is it? No, why do you need to know about my tax returns or whatever it is. That's super important because your reputation builds that trust, and that's what people want to do business with. Again, JSS, that's our benchmark. That's who we want to be. We want to build confidence. We want to show confidence. We want to lead with confidence. We want to get clarity. We want to be able to people know our purpose, know what we offer and what we can do for you. Know that we are market leaders. We know that we have the knowledge and the experience, sophistication, the wherewithal, the know-how to be able to help you execute on your next deal. So again, build your brand, know your brand, and communicate that clearly. Thank you.